Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to Wall Street to Bay Street Sunday Chai with ShariaPortfolio Canada. Today is June 20th, 2021, and today we'll talk about the market events this past week, what happened, the trends, and all that other good stuff. My name is Nadeem Mian.
And I'm Shamil. Get your chai ready and let's get right into it. As you guys might be able to see, Nadeem's got his Montreal Canadian shirt on. We have a big Montreal Canadian fan among us. I am a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, so me and Nadeem not on the same page right now. But regardless of that, let's get right into it. Maybe we can just begin by going over the how the markets did over the last week. So looking at the Dow Jones, was down a little under 3% over this past week. The S&P 500 was down 1.7% over the last week. The NASDAQ was down 0.31% over the last week. And the TSX was down 0.6%. So, kind of just, going off that, we had some news in terms of the U.S. Federal Reserve. So, Nadeem, why don't you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. I mean, that was kind of the big event for the week. The U.S. Federal Reserve met on Wednesday, and we got a lot of comments out of them. Just generally speaking, it was more of a hawkish tone from what we've previously heard. The news really is that the Jerome Powell, what he was basically saying was that the Federal Reserve raised its expectation for inflation, saying that the headline figure could reach about 3.4%. Which is about a percentage above higher than what they previously forecasted in March. And overall, I mean, just in terms of interest rates, because this is what it's all about, the expectation previously was that, they weren't going to be increasing any rates until at least 2024. But now, according to the dot plots of the individual FOMC members, the expectation now is pointing to about 2 rate hikes in 2023. So, I mean, on top of that, all that having said that, there was also comments that Jerome Powell made that it looks like there was some conversation about tapering some of the bond purchases that were going that they've been doing. And so there is talk now that they could be reducing some of the bond purchases going forward.
Perfect. And, kind of just going off that, can you tell us a little more about what impact that had on the market recently?
Sure. I mean, the immediate impact obviously was negative. I mean, the S&P 500 actually had the worst week since February, and as you quoted, the numbers, we did see just a general sell-off. Post those comments. The weakness was kind of mostly obvious in some of the sectors that kind of led the weakness were sectors such as materials, industrials, financials, and even we saw some weakness in energy. Where some of the strength was, I guess you can say, the US dollar did have a pretty strong week versus a lot of the global currencies. I would say the technology sector was probably the least, the least worst performing sector, as you told us what the NASDAQ did for the week.
Yeah, we also saw, a big sell-off in the commodities market. So can you maybe elaborate a little more on that as well?
Sure. So the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index was down about 9.2% for the week. I mean, that's a commodity benchmark that takes into account, a basket of commodities out there. So, there were a number of factors, obviously, that played into the sell-off. I mean, first off, the Federal Reserve and the fact that they're increasing their rates. Historically, there's been the relationship between the U.S. dollar and the commodities have been negative. I guess, negative in the sense that, in times where the U.S. dollar has been weaker, commodities tend to do well, and vice versa. So, with the potential for interest rates increase, the market's kind of reading that as this might be a good time for the U.S. dollar and vice versa. That was one. The other couple of things that we saw was that there was news out of China and that the government of China was going to be cracking down on, hoarders, that anybody that was hoarding any commodities, because I guess that was something that was going on. And they also announced that they were going to be releasing reserves, their own reserves, and those reserves included metals such as copper and zinc and some of these other metals that were previously doing quite well, over the past week, over the past few months.
Awesome. And I guess, one of the more exciting topics, or maybe not so exciting, but that's been going around quite a bit for Canadians, is there's some news on the Canadian housing market. So why don't you touch a little bit upon that as well?
Yeah, sure. So the Canadian Real Estate Association released some numbers this week, and basically what they said was that the Canadian the May existing home sales fell for a second month in a row and was down 7.4% month over month. And like I mentioned, this is the second consecutive drop in new home sales. However, it's still at historic record levels. And citing kind of Bloomberg economics, even with these elevated levels, Bloomberg economics still ranks Canada as the second. They actually have Canada second in their global bubble ranking, second only behind New Zealand. So really, I guess, obviously with the pandemic and, people just kind of, what we've seen obviously is this shift to the suburbs and people upgrading their homes with the work from home. The Canadian housing market has been one of the hottest around the world. Now, recently, the Bank of Canada Governor Tiff McLean did kind of warn on this, spoke about this topic, and he did point that that we could possibly see the cost of mortgages or the cost of going higher. And along with that, the government of Canada did introduce some new mortgage qualification rules that are supposed to be much tighter.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully you guys, that was kind of all the topics we had, planned for today. So thank you guys so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next week on Sunday Chai with ShariaPortfolio. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Welcome, Assalamu
Nadeem Mian, Portfolio Manager, registered as an advising representative, and Shamil Devji, Financial Advisor, registered as a dealing representative with ShariaPortfolio Canada Inc., a portfolio manager registered in the provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta. Their opinions and statements expressed in this show are their personal opinions and do not necessarily reflect those of ShariaPortfolio. They are effective as of the date of this broadcast only and are subject to change. This discussion is for general information purposes only and is not investment advice.